Maryland's homelessness crisis has reached catastrophic levels, marking one of the fastest-growing humanitarian disasters in the United States. In 2025, the state saw a 17% surge in homelessness, pushing thousands of individuals and families onto the streets. Baltimore, once a city of opportunity, now struggles under the weight of over 15,000 unhoused residents, with shelters overcrowded and unable to meet demand. Tent cities, once confined to neglected areas, have spread into suburban neighborhoods, revealing how even middle-class families have been caught in the collapse. The crisis is not just about numbers, it's about survival. Crime near encampments has spiked by over 30%, with rising reports of the violent attacks, drug-related incidents, and human trafficking. The government's response has been slow and ineffective, leaving thousands trapped in a cycle of poverty, addiction, and desperation. Despite emergency funding, the crisis is accelerating, faster than the system can handle. Maryland, a state once known for its thriving economy and strong communities, has now become one of the fastest-growing homelessness hotspots in America. In just 1 year, the homeless population has skyrocketed, with families, veterans, and even former middle-class workers forced onto the streets at an unprecedented rate. Tent cities are no longer confined to neglected areas. They have spread to Baltimore's downtown, suburban shopping centers, and even affluent neighborhoods. What happened? How did Maryland fall apart so fast? And is there any way out of this crisis? The homelessness crisis in Maryland has reached record-breaking levels, leaving government officials overwhelmed and residents terrified. Homelessness surged by 17% in 2025, marking the sharpest increase in state history. Baltimore alone now has over 15,000 unhoused residents, crowding city shelters beyond capacity. Tent cities have emerged not just in urban zones, but also in once affluent suburbs, showing how even stable families have been caught in the collapse. Crime near encampments has increased by over 30%, with rising reports of violent attacks, drug-related incidents, and human trafficking. Despite emergency funding, the crisis is accelerating, faster than the system can handle. What's fueling the crisis? Maryland's homelessness epidemic didn't appear overnight. It was a slow burn until it ignited into disaster. AI-driven layoffs and economic collapse industries across Maryland have been shattered by automation, wiping out thousands of jobs in manufacturing, retail, and customer service. Families once stable are now living in cars, unable to find work in a shrinking economy. Skyrocketing housing costs, rents have exploded, with the median cost for a one-bedroom apartment exceeding $2,200 in Baltimore. With wages failing to keep up, evictions have skyrocketed, leaving entire families without anywhere to go. Mental health and addiction epidemic. Maryland's mental health system was already strained, but now it has collapsed completely. Over 35% of Maryland's homeless population suffers from severe mental health issues, but there are no treatment programs to help them. Opioid and fentanyl overdoses have doubled in encampments, turning them into zones of despair rather than relief. Failed government intervention. Despite hundreds of millions in funding, there is no coordinated strategy for Maryland's homeless crisis. Shelters are overcrowded. Affordable housing is years behind schedule. Law enforcement is overwhelmed by crime linked to encampments. This isn't just a housing issue anymore. It's a full-scale humanitarian disaster. The streets of Maryland, a harsh, unforgiving reality. For those now living unhoused in Maryland, survival is uncertain. Encampments are dangerous, plagued by rising crime, exploitation, and gang activity. Healthcare is non-existent, leaving people dying from preventable illnesses. Police often avoid certain zones, treating them as lost territories rather than communities in need of aid. Shelters no longer guarantee safety, as overcrowding turns them into breeding grounds for sickness and violence. Families try to escape, but with housing out of reach, jobs disappearing, and government assistance failing, the cycle continues endlessly. What's fueling Maryland's homelessness crisis in 2025? Maryland's homelessness crisis didn't appear overnight. It has been just building for years, fueled by economic instability, failed policies, and a collapsing social safety net. In 2025, the situation has spiraled out of control, with thousands of people forced onto the streets due to a combination of job losses, skyrocketing rent, and government failures. Let's break down the 7 key factors driving this humanitarian disaster. 1. AI-driven layoffs and economic collapse. One of the biggest contributors into Maryland's homelessness explosion is the mass automation of jobs. AI-driven automation has wiped out thousands of jobs in manufacturing, retail, and customer service, leaving entire families without income. Middle-class workers, who once had stable careers, are now living in their cars, unable to find work in an economy that no longer needs them. The gig economy, once a safety net for struggling workers, has collapsed, with wages too low to afford basic living expenses. Maryland's economy, once strong and diverse, is now fractured, leaving thousands unemployed and vulnerable. 2. Skyrocketing housing costs and mass evictions. Maryland's housing market has become unaffordable, pushing even working-class families into homelessness. Rent prices have surged, with the median cost for a one-bedroom apartment exceeding $2,200 in Baltimore. Evictions have skyrocketed as landlords increase rent beyond what tenants can afford. Affordable housing projects are years behind schedule, leaving thousands without options. Even government assistance programs have failed to keep up, leaving low-income residents with nowhere to turn. 3. Mental health and addiction epidemic. Maryland's mental health system has collapsed, leaving thousands of vulnerable individuals without care. Over 35% of Maryland's homeless population suffers from severe mental health issues, but there are no treatment programs to help them. Opioid and fentanyl overdoses have doubled in encampments, turning them into zones of despair rather than relief. Hospitals and clinics are overwhelmed, unable to provide long-term psychiatric care for those who need it most. Without all mental health support, many fall deeper into addiction and instability, making escaping homelessness nearly impossible. 4. Failed government intervention and policy breakdown. Despite hundreds of millions in funding, Maryland's government has failed to control the crisis. Shelters are overcrowded, forcing people to remain in unsafe encampments. Law enforcement is overwhelmed, struggling to manage rising crime near homeless communities. Rehabilitation programs have months-long wait lists, leaving those struggling with addiction and mental health issues without immediate help. Instead of long-term solutions, Maryland's government has focused on temporary fixes, leaving thousands trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. A crisis that's only getting worse. Maryland's homelessness crisis is not slowing down. It's accelerating, fueled by economic collapse, unaffordable housing, and government failures. The question remains, is Maryland truly committed to solving homelessness, or is it simply managing the symptoms of a broken system? Let me know if you'd like to refine this further or add specific angles. Your expertise in crafting compelling narratives can make this even more impactful. Blast off. The streets of Maryland, a harsh, unforgiving reality. Maryland's homelessness crisis has transformed its streets into zones of desperation, where survival is uncertain and danger lurks at every corner. Once thriving neighborhoods now host tent cities, sprawling across sidewalks, underpasses, and abandoned lots. The contrast is stark. Just blocks away from luxury developments, thousands of people struggle to find food, shelter, and safety. Encampments, the rise of tent cities. Homeless encampments have exploded in size and number, spreading beyond Baltimore into suburban areas once untouched by extreme poverty. These makeshift communities, built from tarps, scrap wood, and discarded materials, offer little protection against the elements. Winter is brutal, with freezing temperatures turning tents into ice-cold prisons. Summer brings unbearable heat, with no access to clean water or cooling stations. Flooding and storms destroy shelters overnight, leaving residents exposed to the elements. Despite their instability, these encampments serve as the only refuge, and for thousands who have nowhere else to go. Crime and violence, a daily battle for survival. Maryland's homeless population faces constant threats, not just from the weather, but from crime, exploitation, and lawlessness. Violent attacks within encampments have surged, with reports of robbery, assault, and even homicide becoming more frequent. Drug cartels and gangs have infiltrated homeless communities, using them as hubs for trafficking and illegal activity. Women and children are particularly vulnerable, facing higher risks of abuse and exploitation. Law enforcement struggles to maintain order, often avoiding certain areas due to the overwhelming scale of the crisis. Health crisis, disease, and medical neglect. Without a clean water, sanitation, or medical care, Maryland's homeless population is trapped in a public health emergency. Outbreaks of tuberculosis, typhus, and hepatitis A have spread through encampments due to unsanitary conditions. Hospitals are overwhelmed, with emergency rooms flooded by preventable illnesses caused by extreme poverty. Mental health disorders and substance abuse further complicate the crisis, with no structured support system to help those in need. Many die from treatable conditions, simply because they lack access to basic health care. The system that fails them. For those living unhoused in Maryland, escaping homelessness is nearly impossible. Job applications require an address, making employment unattainable for many. Shelters are overcrowded, forcing people to remain in unsafe encampments. Rehabilitation programs have months-long wait lists, leaving those struggling with addiction and mental health issues without immediate help. The system offers temporary solutions, but no long-term stability, leaving thousands trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. A crisis without an end. Maryland's streets have become a battleground for survival, where the homeless fight against crime, disease, and neglect every single day. Despite government promises, the crisis continues to spiral out of control, showing no signs of slowing down. The question remains, is Maryland truly committed to solving homelessness, or is it simply managing the symptoms of a broken system? Let me know if you'd like to refine this further or add specific angles. Your expertise in crafting compelling narratives can make this even more impactful. Blast off A.